Today with Steve Christensen, one of Houston's most in-demand music producers, mixers, and engineers. Steve has worked on stuff like Khruangbin, worked on stuff for the Mastersons, Robert Ellis, and won the Grammy in 2009 for Best Folk Album for your work with Steve Earle on the album Towns.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, thank you for taking the time, dude.
Thanks,
I'm super
dude.
excited to do this. Was music always such a big part of your life, or was it something that came into your life over time?
So, like, my parents I did not grow up with, like, music fan parents or anything like that, at all. It's something I discovered when I was, like, 13 years old or something, you know what I mean? I don't know what it was, but it clicked, for me.
What records?
It was just like, I mean, dude, it is, age me, I'm an old person, but listening to, like, the fucking radio, recording my own little mixtapes and stuff like that. And it's just like, I know this is as cliche as it gets, my little fucking boombox thing. And it was like Eleanor Rigby blew my fucking mind for some reason. You know what I mean? So that might have been just like the thing that like got me into it. And I was just the right age at the right time for the grunge era also and all that stuff, you know what I mean? And so I don't know, I mean, it was just that purity of being young in the 90s and stuff, it was just like I couldn't eat up music,
right?
So I couldn't absorb it fast
and then
enough.
So out of that love for music, how did you get your start as an audio engineer?
I did not like high school very much. I did not enjoy it. Yeah, I did not enjoy that process. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at all. Okay. Had like, and it was just like trying to just kind of bouncing around in like community college for a semester or two to while I was trying to figure out what I was going to go to college for and stuff. And no ambition, nothing at all. But I, at that point, was in my room with my Tascam cassette 4-track, and I loved it. You know what I mean? I loved flipping the tape over, and it was like, wasn't good as a songwriter. I loved the process. I loved messing with the EQs.
So when you first started recording, you were like recording things that you were...
my stuff, my songs and things like that. But it was really, it was just like everything was in reverse. You know what I mean? It was like a bunch of reverb on everything.
Right.
But like, it just hit me one day. I was like, well, audio engineering might be cool.
Right.
And then I Google a correspondence course. I just Google audio engineering. And a correspondence course pops up, which you will know well, Recording Connection.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so I
this
called...
This had to be in its infancy at this time, right?
Infancy.
Like
we're talking 1998.
Wow.
Dude, I call the guy. What was the guy's name? Oh, what was his name?
It might have been different by the time that I was doing it.
Yeah, okay, anyway. Call the guy, get him on the phone. He gets me in, pay him the tuition. He gets me an internship at Sugar Hill Studios here in Houston.
Wow, so it was because I know that you're a Sugar Hill guy for the longest, but it was from Recording Connection that you actually got placed into Sugar Hill.
I got placed into Sugar Hill with an engineer at the time, Ramon Morales. Okay, so within 2 weeks of me just being like, audio engineering might be cool.
Right.
There I am at the studio, okay? And like I said, it was just a time where the music industry and the recording industry was just different. It was so busy, okay? So within 2 weeks of me deciding that, I'm at the studio, a year later I'm hired, and a year after that, I'm on tour with Destiny's Child doing front of house sound.
Holy shit.
Right place at the right time, dude.
Wait, walk me through that timeline one more time. So 2 weeks after you
think audio engineering's cool.
Right. You are placed in Sugar Hill.
And I start my internship.
Right.
A year after that, I get hired.
Right.
And then a year after that, I'm on tour with Destiny's Child.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, also the fact that I feel like Sugar Hill, at the time that I started popping over there and seeing you guys, it felt like it's a very vibe heavy studio, but it felt like a kind of utopian idea of like what a studio it could be. You know, you guys having your own rooms and kind of all collaborating and everything feeling very open door policy. I mean, that's kind of a miracle that was the place. Like, you didn't intern at another studio and then find your way to Dan. It was like it just happened.
Pop right in there. Yeah, I know. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that is insane.
Yeah.
How long were you on the road with Destiny's Child for?
Dude, okay, so the guy Ramon, who I'd been interning, he was he was a great live sound engineer, okay? And so Destiny's Child had been coming to the studio.
And working with Dan.
And working with Dan and working with Ramon.
Okay.
And they liked Ramon. They ended up hiring him as their live sound person.
Right.
And that's what freed up the spot at the studio for me to get hired. Okay, so then he's touring the world with Destiny's Child. Well, he got engaged, was going to get married, and he was like, "Steve, you should fill in for me on my honeymoon." Well, I can't say no, and this was like when I was too stupid to say no. You know what I mean?
Did you know what you were doing in a live sound
I'd never done live sound once in my life.
Wow.
I had never pulled up a microphone through a PA system.
Ever
in my life.
Wow.
The very first time I did it was like in upstate New York when he's showing me the ropes, with and they were the biggest fucking pop group in the world. This is Say My Name.
Right.
You know? So I did like one show where he's showing me the ropes. He fucking bolts, and then I'm on a plane to Paris, you know, for a 2-week tour of Europe.
Wow.
Having only done live sound one time.
Right. He was
there,
kind of running the show, and you were following along.
Yes. I had a panic attack on that airplane when the weight of what I had gotten myself into was starting to weigh down on me.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a 2-week tour of Europe.
How'd you do?
I pulled it off, dude.
That's
I pulled it off. It's not like there was a fucking band up there or anything like that. You know, it was just like essentially a DAT tape, 3 microphones, and some delay cues and things like that. But you know, I had like helped ring out the PA system. It was before in-ears and stuff like that, dude. It was. I did not know what I was doing. So a couple of like hardcore grizzled live sound guys did not. I mean, they were just like, I was fucking 20. I was 20 years old.
20 years old.
I think I just turned 21.
20 years old, 2 years in on audio. First time, doing live sound. You're with Destiny's Child, and there was a 2-week run through.
Two-week run
through Europe.
Yeah, again, but a couple of the guys knew I was in way over my head, and they showed me some tips, and stuff, which was really, really nice. Pulled it off, went great, flew back. Never have done live sound ever again.
That was the one.
That was it. Deal. I was like, never want to do this again.
And this may piggyback off my last question, but are there any mentors you had or inspirations you took from those you learned under that you feel directly contribute to your approach today, or was your style in terms of your recording and mixing process developed over time independently, or how much did you take from those experiences with Dan or Ramon or any other person you might have?
I mean, Dan is without a doubt a massive influence. I mean, he's imprinted on me. You know, I'm so thankful that he was my mentor. And I would say that is less technical and more like philosophy and client management and stuff. When I showed up at the studio, I was like grew up. I was so painfully introverted. You know what I mean? I was so shy, and
you're like 18, 19?
Yeah.
18,
19.
Wow.
Yeah, I might have just turned 19. Yeah, you know, and it's like when I was driving down. I was up in the Woodlands. I'd be driving down to Sugar Hill and stuff, and I'd be so scared in my car that at any given point, Dan might have to get up and go to the bathroom, and I would be alone in the control room with the client, and I'd have to small talk with them. You know what I mean? That's how painfully shy and introverted I was. Dan was one of the most charismatic people that I had ever met. I mean, personality was infectious. And it was such an inspiring person and so great to be around.
Right.
And so I immediately, the technical stuff came so easy to me, like signal flow and things like that.
Right.
Like, no big deal. It just, my mind can just do it.
Right.
So, like, I didn't have any issue with the technical side of it.
Right.
But I realized that it was the people side of it.
Which is so crucial.
Which is, to me, what separates the professionals from just any asshole.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, anyone can start a record. It takes a professional to finish one.
No, man. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that was, and without a doubt, like Dan's mentorship and observing Dan and how he was with clients and his, you know, is something that like is a huge part of
Yeah,
my...
I got to work with Dan one time. There was this little local competition to see. It was like the winner would play South by Southwest, and somehow this band that I was in at the time had placed high enough to where you got a day in the studio at Sugar Hill, and we got to work with Dan. And I remember that high of the experience. I had, you know, when I was in my first bands as a teenager, I had recorded at a home studio, but it was almost the opposite of the experience I had with Dan, where like it wasn't very reflective in terms of the aesthetic or the tone of what we were after. But I had that same high, and I hadn't had that in so many years because I had been kind of recording and producing all my own stuff. And so I know exactly what you mean. It was super inspiring to see how he would respond to the music, and then like the cues that he would take in terms of just playing with like subtle things like a reverb throw here or whatever, and his excitement to do that would make me excited to see where it was going to go.
Definitely.
And I feel like that's so important, is to not just document the performances, but lean into what the artist is after in terms of the artistic, like, or the aesthetic quality of the music. And yeah, I felt like he was just such a natural, and it made me feel so much more comfortable.
Definitely.
Which I felt made us all perform better, because we had only recorded with me, like this band of like all my closest friends. And I feel like I was a little anxious getting into it, and it was like all my anxiety was relieved like the moment we were like in the room with him. It was like, oh, this is going to be like fun. Like, he gets it, and not only does he get it, but he's going to like help to amplify this sound that we're after.
Perfect. Exactly.
And we're talking about Dan Workman, who was the owner and one of the head engineers at Sugar Hill for many
engineer,
years,
producer.
Right?
Owner of Sugar Hill.
And then, so I know we spoke a little bit about some of this when you were walking me through the place, but how long were you at Sugar Hill total?
So let's see. I started interning in '98 and moved into here in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is that? That's
17, I don't know, 18, 19 years?
Yeah,
Long fucking time.
Almost 20
dude.
years.
Yeah.
And then, well, I'll come back to that. I wanted to ask, how much of what the listener hears on one of your mixes is baked in during the recording process versus what you're doing in post? Like, how heavy are the moves for vibe on the way in on these records that we know?
Oh, I'd say 80%.
80%.
I bake it in. I want it to be inspiring. Whenever when we're in the process, I'm printing all the effects and stuff. I want it to sound like a record while we're working on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And even just in terms of like, as you're doing that, is that stuff making its way to the cue mixes for the clients as well? Like, are they responding to some of, I mean, obviously compression and things like that they're going to be hearing, but like even effects and all that stuff, it's all happening in real time as they're recording. Wow.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's cool. And the idea being that as soon as they pop the headphones off, come sit on this couch, it's like blow the hair back, like that's what we're after, and not the feeling, because I've been aiming for this myself, in that when I would record, when I was first getting started, I was too hesitant to really hit compressors too hard or EQs too hard, because I was self-conscious about maybe overdoing it and then not being able to take it away later. So I always felt like it was the safer route to get an accurate capture and then emphasize later. But there's this feeling that can happen sometimes in my experience, where a drummer will come back into the room and be like, yeah, it sounds like clean, it sounds good, but like it doesn't quite sound like what it does in the room. Like it doesn't have that impact, you know. And you find that process of baking things in, that's like really what you're after, is to like,
without a doubt.
And also there's probably some trust earned with the client, like when they do pop the headphones off and come and sit and they're like, dude, that sounds fucking awesome.
Exactly.
Like, and then from there, you're kind of smooth sailing in terms of mixing moves later.
Without a doubt, yeah. And it gives, and you know, and it gives me validation of my instincts when they're responding to it,
right.
and then I kind of do more. Like sometimes the first song I might be a little safer,
right?
But it's like if the second I start getting indie validation, then I start committing more and more.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that. I've known you for something like 10 years at this point, something like that, right?
That's crazy.
It is, and we've never worked together. And I had talked a couple times about bringing stuff to you, and it was just I think our schedules both being as what they are, it was harder to line up. But I had a story that I wanted to get your perspective on. So like one of the first times I had started taking sessions at Sugar Hill, I was working at a Studio B. It was with a local band, and we were doing live recording. And I noted that like several of the inputs in that room either wouldn't pass signal or would pass signal, and then things would cut out. And I was like filled with like dread and like a terror as the session was going on, because I was used to being in this studio that I came up at was like very new. You know, all the gear was new. There was no vintage stuff. There weren't any old lines. So it was like if one thing was down, for me it was a new thing and like this new challenge. And I remember messaging you about it and being like, man, like I feel like there's some inputs in Studio B that like aren't working. And you were just like, yeah, like there's landmines all over that room. And you kind of just like laughed it off. And I wondered, you know, I tend to, and maybe it's because of my kind of background and me going to school for like a traditional audio engineering degree, but like it seemed like you could kind of incorporate almost anything into your workflow. And then in kind of bouncing off of that, with a record like The Universe Smiles Upon You being recorded in something like a barn, right? How much does that kind of laissez-faire mentality inform like what you're doing in record making, or can you incorporate just about anything into your workflow? Do you know what I'm saying?
I can incorporate anything into my workflow. I just like, honestly, John, just don't really care. You know what I mean? It's like,
what do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I guess it's probably coming up at Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill was a disaster. You know what I mean? It's just like you know, the place was quirks.
Yeah.
Quirky
and it's
place.
one of the oldest, if not, it's the oldest
studio in the South.
Running, yeah.
So I guess I don't even really, I mean, like, I've only worked in a few fancy studios.
Right.
Like, this place is a disaster, too. So it's just all really I know. But it ultimately isn't that big of a deal. You know, it's just like, that didn't work. And it's just like, boom, move over here.
Right.
So it's like you end up not being precious at all. You know, it's like, my vocal isn't going through this, like, preamp that I wanted or something. Well, it doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
I just got to get the vocal up so we get a good performance.
100%.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's really what it's about, is the performance of the artist, and your relationship to my relationship to the technical limitations or whatever of the space is really irrelevant.
Exactly.
And
it is.
The sooner that I feel like, especially over time, I think I've gotten more used to that idea, but like, I feel like starting out, I was interested in my recording sounding professional, you know, and so that thought of like that technical bit was very concerning to me, but ultimately to you, the performance is really the thing that is going to make or break the record making, and all this other stuff is just a means to capture that.
Definitely. And I know, and I can't, you know, and it's you figure that out pretty early on in your engineering career by ruining records, by blowing the vibe, because you're striving for this perfect sound, and then making the singer test the microphone for 30 minutes or something like that.
And then that feeling of the initial
game over.
Quality of the performance is gone.
Yeah.
And it was really better on the first test you did than it was on the 30th
Easy.
Take when you were like finally ready to go.
Easy.
Right.
Easy. It's so simple.
And then I had a question. So kind of piggybacking off of that, How much of this setup is set and forget, kind of like, how much of this setup is basically ready to record at any time? Is it malleable in terms of the tonal sensibility of what you're working on, or are there some things that you kind of have up and they're always up?
It's incredible. You think having like our own space that we would have more plug and play.
Right.
No, it's mass chaos every single session.
And you're moving things around a lot based on what you hear.
Exactly. And it's just like, once again, I'm all about trying to get things done fast. So it's like I move the snare drum mic over to the guitar amp, that then gets moved over to the acoustic guitar, and then I lose control. So,
like tracing the lines, being like, wait, that was the snare mic, then that was the guitar mic.
And then at that point, it's just like at the end of the session, I'm holding on by a thread, and just might as well pull the whole fucking thing, start over. So I just start over every session. Plus, I also hate doing the same thing every session. There's people that are so workflow dialed, your SoundFlow app and all that stuff. I am chaos every session. I want to do something different every session.
Right.
I do things different every session. I'm going to plug it into different shit every session and stuff, and I always set it up differently. You know?
And as far as moving microphones around in one session, is some of that a product of wanting to, are you making new auditions per song in some cases, or is it like once you've set up for the band and you've kind of moved things around a good bit, you're like, I'm pretty content with that?
Depends on
how varied the sensibility of the songs are.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's case by case. There's some bands where you get a live sound. That's the sound of the record. Right. You know what I mean? And it's just like, wow, we got a great sound. This is working. And then their songs and their arrangements are very consistent. You know what I mean? So you don't fuck that shit up.
Like a Nevermind kind of scenario outside of maybe one or two acoustic songs.
Exactly. But then there's other artists and bands where the songs within their project are very varied and each need their own.
And you might be using ribbons on the overheads for one thing, and then be like, I need something bright.
This doesn't work for this song. Now he's bashing on the cymbals, and his way, and then then you do have to take the time to change things up. Right. And I do commit. It's just like, no, this isn't the right sound or setup, and you have to change the drum kit and everything.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
But in my understanding from the many people I've spoken with about working with you, is that it is a very fast, and efficient process. How quickly, how much are you running around here?
I'm running around like a crazy person.
Pretty consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like my process is chaos. And some people, I've had people say that.
And you thrive in that.
I mean, obviously, look at this place, dude. It's bananas. And it's so funny because I've had people say that, I have such an efficient workflow. And
I've heard a lot of people say that.
I don't know who I'm fooling. It's insane. I mean, my process feels insane to me. Right. When I do it.
But maybe part of that efficiency from what they're perceiving is also, I think sometimes as an engineer who's working, I speak for myself, but I know a lot of people starting out too. You're mostly working with local clients, and there's you're always up against budget, really, and just in terms of what the client can facilitate for the project that they're working on. And there are some cases where I will have that instinct, or I've definitely had this in the past, where I'm like, somehow this song, I feel like the overheads are a little too bright or whatever, but as a product of that limitation in terms of our time together and just how quickly we need to get this stuff down, I won't be able to facilitate that in the moment. But then later it ends up taking so much more time to mix those microphones like a Coles or whatever.
Yeah, it would have been so much faster if you just changed
it. Would have taken 10 minutes versus an hour of EQ or whatever.
Yep, definitely.
So maybe part of that is you moving things around based on the sensibility of the song, but then it's like, again, they're having that experience of on first playback, they're like, yeah, that feels good.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, that makes
it's all those things.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What advice do you have in terms of clients or bands who are recording in a studio environment like this for the first time? How do you feel a client can best prepare for a session, like if someone wanted to come in and do some work with you?
Let's see. That is a good question. Let me think about that
Do
for
you
a
have
second.
like something like that? Like when a client reaches out to you, I guess that's kind of what I'm after is like, what is that conversation like?
Oh, so like a lot of times I am chit-chatting with them and I'm sort of feeling out what their expectations are and what their needs are. Okay.
And determining if you feel you'd be the best
And
fit?
seeing if I'd be the best fit at this point in my career. You know what I mean? Okay, so I'm not like you, dude. I don't come from a musician background. I'm not a songwriter. I can't help write a bridge.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean? I can't help write a melody. So whenever I
So
know,
if a client says something like that to you, you pretty instinctively are like, I don't
yeah,
know.
if there's any songwriting stuff, it's just like I'm not necessarily the guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm a kind of like way more big picture vibe guy. So I
Right.
work really well with people that are very independently.
They're bringing in the songs.
They're bringing in the songs, and they are very solutions oriented. And I can say these like really, and they work well with me because they don't want like maybe they don't thrive with somebody that's really trying to get in and mess with their songs and
Right.
songwrite
Right.
with them and stuff. And I can just give them these like big global, like, God, we need something at the end of the bridge.
Right.
You know what I mean?
yeah. Not like play C here. It's just like I have a feeling that like this transition could be smoother or something like that.
Yeah, and stuff like that. So those are the clients that I work well with. And so it's just really more chit-chatting with the artist and what their expectations are and stuff when I get a feel if I'm a good fit.
Right,
or
right.
not. Okay.
And then do you have any do you have any advice for someone who's kind of, or someone who's coming to work with you for the first time and it's their first time in a studio? Are there any kind of like predicates or things that you feel like would be helpful to someone who's just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like generally if somebody is coming to me, they've heard something I worked on and like they're usually a band
Yes.
or somebody that wants to track as an ensemble.
Right.
You know? If possible, I want to go possibly see them live or something like that
Right.
beforehand. So, or definitely get demos.
Right.
So I get a feel
Okay.
for what the
Vibe is. Right.
and the songs are.
Right.
You know?
So demos, definitely have demos.
Definitely have
And then if they
demos.
don't have demos, you're like, I'll need some demos before I can kind of tell you whether I'm going to
Be a good fit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
That's a huge one. Making sure that the tempos are like dialed. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that is such a huge fundamental thing.
That
dude.
happens in advance? You're like,
I'm
this
like-
one feels a little fast. Maybe you take this down a couple
So maybe
clicks.
I'll say that, or I'm just like definitely have all your tempos written down beforehand.
Oh, dude.
You know what I mean?
The biggest lifesaver. And,
Yeah.
and such a, that's always... I guess, part of what I'm interested in, right, is like in talking with people like you, is I feel like just where I'm at in my career and mostly working with locals, that there's an educational component that I feel is like so crucial to getting the best end result, because oftentimes that might not occur to a band that's like just starting out. You know what I mean? Like I've worked with so many clients who come in and don't necessarily they might have demos, but they definitely don't have the meters and tempos mapped. And like, at bar 110, we're switching, and this is going to be like a gradual retard here, or whatever. And it makes such an immeasurable difference. One, because they have to have rehearsed to those metronomes, and then also just in terms of the logistical challenges of doing that in real time with them in the space. It's like you're losing time and they're losing money, and it's just kind of a bummer.
And tempo, groove
is everything.
and is everything. That's such the foundational thing. You know what I mean? 1 BPM makes or breaks a song for me.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
So like with, and then, this will kind of piggyback off that. As a music producer, an audio engineer, and a mixer, how do you determine what hats you're wearing? Is that something that you are talking in those same conversations in advance of any recording? Is that happening there? Does it happen sometimes like, is it happening fluidly, like in the session?
Like whether or not I'm an engineer or a producer?
Yeah, like to the extent that you're going to be involved, how much do you know that like in advance?
I really don't. I mean, I do have a few people ask.
Or is that something you even designate?
I don't
you know
even
what I'm
really.
saying?
Yeah,
You
they're
don't
just
even
coming
care.
to work with me. I
Right.
don't even really care. Like if people think I only know how to make records how I make records. There is no difference between albums I produce and albums I just engineer. I do the exact same thing.
Right.
Whether or not, or the only difference would be if there's a producer in the session.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then there's a clear delineation.
Right.
There. But if I'm just here with the artist, I'm producing the record.
For all intents and purposes,
for all
it's
intents
all
and
the
purposes.
same.
It's all the same to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So really,
And you're not sweating this title thing. You're just like, whatever this record needs to be, the best version of itself. And to the extent
that's all I care about.
It's probably fairly obvious also, to the extent that someone is kind of pretty consistently asking for your opinion on something, or how does this feel, or whatever. And then if not, you're probably assuming they got it.
If you're in a session with an artist and there isn't a producer there, you're producing the record. It's
as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. Yeah.
And working out of an unconventional environment like this, are you communicating any of what you feel might be limitations of the space in advance?
Yeah, definitely.
And then so here we're not far from the train, right?
No, I can't. It's honestly, I'm shocked that it has not come by
yet.
Come by yet.
Yeah. But so those parts of the space, you kind of will report to them, be like, hey, just so you know.
Yeah, this is a warehouse. If it rains, we're shut down.
We're here in rain.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Or what do you mean when you say shut down? Why would you
there's
shut
no
down?
there's no recording happening. It's a
because of the kind of a you can hear the rain is why.
I would love if it was like that's a like now imagine
that's just white noise.
Imagine it as a roar.
Yeah.
It's a roar.
What is this metal?
Just sheet metal.
Yeah.
There's no insulation. There's nothing up there.
So just clack 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 clack. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's it. So. Yeah, I mean, just beholden to the elements. The Astros parking, there's honking, there's music going by the train constantly, It's like not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
And then but there is a line that you will draw and say, like, if it's raining, this is now bordering on problematic.
Yeah, or if it's like, if somebody's wanting to do just like a super delicate jazz ensemble or a string section, or something like that, it's like this might not be the best place.
Right. In those cases where you are drawn to the artist or their sensibility or interested in working with the project, you just take those projects elsewhere, like something like if it was going to be, something like that, like a super delicate, piano ballad or something like that, you would do that somewhere else, or?
I don't.
Yeah. Because you're locked in here.
Because I'm locked in here.
You work like every single day.
Generally, I've been doing this so long that my clientele, like, is a certain sound and there's a certain aesthetic.
Right.
And like I am
that
not
leans into
exactly. I am not a white glove engineer.
Right.
You know what I mean? My engineering is fuzzy, dark, muddy. Just like flaws everywhere and stuff like that. And that's just part of my sound.
Right.
And so like the thing that's a grind is if like I work with Ken Ballard, who's a producer here in town, who's amazing piano player, you know what I mean? Amazing musician. And we're just like doing this like solo piano album for him. Playing his heart out, and it's just like, sorry Ken, we gotta wait for the train to go by and stuff, or I have to turn off the air conditioner and we're just baking in here and stuff. So it's just part of the deal.
Right.
Yeah.
And those clients, I mean, at this point in your career with the records that you've made, and I feel very much that you have a certain sound. These clients are drawn to that more than anything, and any limitations of the space is just part of the process.
Experience.
Yeah. And you're never really sweating that stuff. You're just like, it is what it is, and then you guys hang for 30 minutes until whatever subsides.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. You know what I mean? I lose my ass financially sometimes. It's just like sometimes
when it rains like this on and off and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's just like, we'll do another day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So.
And then, how much do you feel that the space that you're working in, whether it was here or whether it was Sugar Hill, and I know you've worked on records with other people in other places, how much do you feel that the space contributes to like the end result or like the aesthetic of your recordings?
For me, a lot.
Yeah.
A huge amount. Like, and there was a time there where I was sort of specializing, like my shtick was taking my recording setup to unconventional spaces, because at that point I was in a small garage apartment. And you was like need to stretch out.
This is what time period?
Probably 2010 to 2014.
So, and this is, we were speaking about this just before I think we started rolling, but you were a part of the music industry in this kind of beautiful time where budgets were bountiful and clients are plentiful and everything's going super well at Sugar Hill. And then over the course of the 2003 to maybe this time period that you're talking about now, things shift and more audio has been more democratized and everything is available to everyone, and budgets are decreasing because of Napster and all this stuff. So you acquire your own equipment, and then your thing becomes taking that equipment to
I could make more money, and the client could pay less money.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And we could spend more time making records. And this was, this was all so important to me.
Dude.
Like, I mean, I was just so desperate for time.
Yeah, time really is the most important factor in any record. And I mean, the luxury of having that time.
Yes.
And then also, I mean, I found that to be so true, just in my own trajectory, having come up at a studio, I was making 25% of the money that I was bringing in for the company or whatever, which is a product of the significant overhead that most traditional studios, they start with $1 million or $2 million plus budget, and then they're having to recoup that budget for so many years that it only makes sense for them to pay a guy sitting in the chair 25% of the take or whatever. But I found that when I left there, I was able to charge less, spend more time, and that the quality increased pretty dramatically.
Definitely. And for the client, they don't see necessarily the delineation between we're paying the studio and we're paying.
They don't see it at all.
Yeah, right? You are
it's the same
that
dollars to them.
They're valuing like from their point of view, they're paying you all that fat stacks because it's for your work. So for your work. And so that's why it was just like it felt good. So it was terrible for Sugar Hill that I bolted, but it was way better for my personal career.
And then also for the projects, right?
And for the
you
projects.
You found that you were able to spend more time on them, and the client was able to.
And I just had so much more fun.
Right, right. Without having the stress of.
Without having the
we
stress.
only have this 3 days together, and then maybe even on your own you have more like 4 or 5 days for the same amount.
Until I mean, it was John and I, my studio partner, we talk about it all the time back in the Sugar Hill days. It's like you get 1 day to mix the entire record. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, I have 15 songs. You know what I mean?
Like impossible.
I got to do, I can spend 1 hour on a song and that's it. And we got to move on.
Right.
When
you were working in that capacity, like if you did have a turnaround, like something like that, did you find yourself spending the most time on maybe something you felt like was kind of like a lighthouse for the record and then applying a lot of those same settings to the rest of it? Or did you literally just divide the time evenly?
I would divide the time evenly. So there might, but then like thankfully you might look at the songs and be like, okay, this song will go pretty quick. You know what I mean? And
if I keep some of my chain intact from the last one, you mean?
Yeah, well,
or just generally?
Just generally the type of song it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like you have to average it out to about an hour.
Based on how difficult you think the mix would be. Like if it's Bohemian Rhapsody, you have to give that
get a little more
TLC.
time.
Yeah,
totally. Oh, it was brutal, dude. Brutal doing that.
And then so back to the space, like.
Well, I had so much fun in that time period because every session was this weird new space. The band would rent
that's what I wanted to get at. So you're actually taking your rig and recording anywhere, or
anywhere. So we get our beach house in Galveston, you know what I mean, or it was just like somebody has like a cabin out in the hill country, or I'm just going to somebody's house for a week or something like that.
And one of these records is the record that won the Grammy for. Is that right?
Well, yeah. So I had gotten good at that workflow, and I was connected with Chris and Eleanor Masterson, who were really good friends.
Right.
You know, and so
and they worked with them in the past.
And I'd worked with them in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And in unconventional spaces.
Right.
And so when Steve Earle was telling Chris that he wanted to do an album in his living room, as opposed to, at that point, he had only done records in fancy studios.
Steve wanted to do it in Steve's living room.
Steve wanted to do it in Steve's living room.
Yes.
Yeah, in Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know. And so Chris was like, well, I know the guy.
Right.
You know. And so like that, me getting good at that workflow is what got me that gig.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess part of that is like, do you think that having this kind of signature sound and finding that niche of being able to do, because I mean, you describe your stuff in one way, but I think as a listener, like, I'm blown away at some of the mixes that you do. And do you think that finding that niche, like, is that something that you would advise like people who are, you know, we have a lot of followers and just friends of mine who are passionate about music, don't necessarily know how to monetize it in a way that's sustainable to them. You know what I mean? And do you feel that finding a niche like that, like developing this thing that is very unique to you has kind of transformed your career, right?
Yeah, it's another thing. So would I advise it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't.
This is just what works for you.
It's just what works for me.
Right.
I don't know how the music industry works. I don't know
Right.
what happens in the music industry once I leave this room.
Right.
I'm just in here.
You don't participate in that bit of it at all.
I'm just in here grinding it out, dude.
Right.
I'm just making records.
Right.
You know.
But this is just what you found translates to this.
It worked for me.
Pretty bankable result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just so happened that like my particular aesthetic and taste and how I hear music just kind of like works good with certain artists. You know what I mean? Like Krungbin in particular and stuff
Right.
like that. Like it just worked out.
Right.
To where like my sound and their music and stuff
It has this effect.
has an effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is interesting to me too, though, because I feel like your recordings and mixes can vary significantly from record to record, but somehow always retain this kind of signature sound that we're talking about, this warmth, but still feel true to the artist that you're working with. How much would you, or how would you describe your aesthetic in terms of mixes and recordings? And are there any go-to pieces of equipment that you have to produce these sounds that have become kind of your signature sensibility?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm definitely influenced from a certain time period, which would be like 1968 through 1983. You know, just like the golden era of music,
right.
in my opinion. Okay,
right. I think so too. I think a lot of people feel that way, right?
Definitely, and it's been really more specifically like 73 to 83 is just my shit. You know
like
what I
any
mean?
records stand out? Anything that's kind of like an engineering staple to you, or something that you'll reference against, or anything like that?
I don't reference any of them.
Ever.
They're just in my DNA.
Palette, yeah.
They're just back there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm always trying to sort of achieve, that feel, how those records felt.
Yeah.
You know. So then I definitely at that point you gravitate towards some of the older equipment and
right.
things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
I've coming up at Sugar Hill was like at that point it had kind of had a lot more modern gear and stuff. And I was doing the same thing I was reading in Mix magazine and stuff. I sold a lot.
Right.
API pre's and fast mics and
what's the lie?
Like the sounds that I was going for isn't pristine. It's not
right.
I like the pristine capture and
it didn't translate to the feeling that you were just describing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what do you find does? Like,
it's like once I started to get into like really slow, like gushy microphones and slow preamps and flat wound bass strings.
Yeah.
And all these things.
Are there things that, I guess my broader point was like when I I'm sure you remember this. You worked on some stuff with a local band called Deep Cuts, and there's one song called Chemicals.
I love that song. It's a great song.
It's fucking great. And,
Yeah.
but your mix is like incredible, and to me it sounds super detailed and very high fidelity, and kind of in contrast to some of the other stuff. And I
Yeah.
guess what I was after is like you use something like the Coils, and I know that you love those pre's.
Yeah.
Is some of this stuff like, is it malleable in terms of getting at less of the kind of saturated fuzz warmth that, you know, something like The Universe Smiles Upon You or any of the Krungman stuff, or even those Robert Ellis records has, versus something like that, which kind of seems to be so defined?
Yeah, that is interesting. So, a big part of that is Chase's production.
Right.
His production was so awesome,
Right.
and his arrangements are so awesome,
Right.
You know, and no, like whenever you start getting, I do know there is a limitation to like distortion and harmonics and stuff like that, especially
Where it's no longer pleasing,
where
you mean?
that doesn't work well with the songs. It's
Right.
choosing what is good for right for the arrangement.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not just doing something just to do it. Okay.
Right. And nothing
So
is
then-
fixed. Like there's nothing that you ever have on everything.
except
It's-
for one thing. The
What
thing
is
that's
that?
consistent is always my sort of effects scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I always have mono springs. I always have mono slapback tape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, I'm always going to have a PCM 60.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's the lexicon.
this lexicon.
Those
you
are
know,
like the 1980s, 1990s?
like, yeah, I think that's probably late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah, they took the 224 and put it into like
Yes.
push button
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
I know you used that on the third Robert Ellis record, like to some effect. I remember us talking about it at the time.
Yeah, like it has the inverse, there's this inverse room.
And you said that, and I remember you also telling me this, which comes back to this kind of laissez-faire thing that I feel like you do so well, this kind of like Zen thing. But like, you would tell me that piece was finicky. I mean, I have to imagine with these old reel-to-reels and the old tape echoes and stuff like that there's some inconsistency potentially in terms of like it performing differently on one vocal versus how it might like 5 minutes later or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's just all part of what we...
Part of the deal. It's like, oh, the left side isn't working today, and it's just like, I'll put a trim plug in on there. Okay, printing it, you know?
Whatever, the path of least resistance
Yeah.
in terms of what is most important to you is like, no, this piece is part of the aesthetic. I could give a fuck whether the left and right is balanced.
Yeah.
I just have to get it balanced so that I can get it, the aesthetic or the sensibility
you can-
contribution.
Yeah, you can fix anything.
Right.
It's all fine.
And then I find that there's a lot of psychology involved in what we do, like, and that the comfort level of the artist corresponds like directly to
Big
the
time.
quality of the performance and just the
Yeah.
quality of like the hang and the overall session. Do you find that working out of a space like this
Huge.
speeds up that process
Yeah.
of getting that client at that ideal comfort level?
My clients are generally like an environment like this versus a spa-like studio
Right.
environment. Some people thrive in that environment.
Right.
My clientele don't usually.
Right.
You know.
I mean, I feel like, and maybe it's just a product of, I'm just a little younger than you, I think, but like, I've, you know, in working out of some of those more traditional studios, I find that a lot of people seem to respond to something like this
Yeah.
versus, and it's not, there's nothing wrong with that approach, but I just think there's so much of it. You know, like you can, there's a laundry list of places you can choose to go cut a record with a really nice console
know.
in a very well designed room, but not necessarily. That was one thing I always really liked about Dan's approach at Sugar Hill is I felt like it was every bit of a great studio, but also like somehow there was a feeling that you got in walking in there, and you know, especially at the time where I was kind of popping over. And you had your space and Josh had his. It was just, it felt different. And I was just curious if you found that it helps. You
It
know?
does for me, like I said, for
Right.
me and my clients, you
Right.
know. And so, like, I get like people come in, you know, when the second they walk in the door,
They know what it is.
and I'm all about just like what's up, dude? Let's get some, the coffee's
Yes.
in there. Everybody, like what you up
This is
to?
your space, and
Yeah.
it's very homey.
Yeah, and it's their space. Once
Right.
they're here, this is their space.
And that's really what you're after.
Yeah.
And maybe it doesn't feel so much like that in a place where there's no art on the walls or no vibe. Like it's just kind of like a doctor's office or something where it's very clinical and like one person to the next, it doesn't change in that way, or it's not like open in that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
It also throws my vibe off being in those places.
Right.
you know?
And just not. It should be fun. What
Should
we
be fun.
do, it should be like the funnest
This
thing.
is music. It's not brain surgery.
Right. And I find that personally sometimes in those studios, especially those studios, in my experience, tend to correspond with higher rates, which also that pressure of every minute, and just in that feeling of like you've done 5 takes and none of them are the take, and you know that, but you're like, well, maybe we have it between those because we have so little time that we really need to kind of move on.
Yeah.
Versus having the luxury of being able to provide an affordable rate and a sustainable rate to the client to be able to keep them coming back and to be able to have that time, and then that translating to the comfort level. It's all kind of a synergy that's happening.
The whole ball game right there.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. Are there any recommendations you have for aspiring audio engineers and music producers for creating this kind of space, or a kind of space that you feel like an artist can best perform in?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I don't know if I know to me, it's all just about the people skills. That's the whole deal. It's like, don't get hung up. I guess I would say 2 things. Don't get hung up on the fucking gear and all of that bullshit. It doesn't matter at all.
To you or the client, or you just mean
if like we were saying earlier, if it's a good arrangement and a good part, it's going to sound good, no matter what.
Right.
It's got to be a great hang,
Right.
okay? Except get your monitoring situation dialed. That's my advice to the young ones, which I wish I had done. I bought a bunch of gear and I was spending money on the wrong thing, listening in an environment where I couldn't hear.
Right.
And
and then you can't get the most out of the equipment because your monitoring situation suffers. So you don't even you're hearing something and you're like, am I hearing that off this back wall back here?
So
is that...
if going in, like if I was young, I would have spent all my money at the beginning on like learning my monitoring environment, getting sweet monitors, getting sweet headphones, and really putting some time, energy, and effort into making sure that was right.
Right.
I think that's
priority one.
Priority one.
I think that's great advice. And then, so in looking around and this being such an open, large space, how do you monitor? Or are these just like, so are these the
ATCs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The monitors, but these columns here, did you produce those or did you purchase those?
I bought them used. Yeah. I bought them from a guy.
And those, I imagine
traps.
that without these tube traps, it's probably a night and day difference, right?
Huge.
And that
made a big difference.
Yeah, and so that is kind of part of what you're saying to someone who may not know, right? Is like not only maybe investing in the monitors, but maybe even at the same time or before getting some kind of a treatment solution to refine your immediate environment so that you can make the choices that you need to best get at the aesthetic of the band.
Now, look at this place. It's crazy. You know what I mean? Okay. This is
in terms of like, an ideal, like what would be an ideal textbook environment.
Yeah.
This is not it.
Okay, so if this is what I consider a good monitoring environment, you should have seen what I had before.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like this was what I ended up with. Well,
I mean, I love this setup, and I think, and I also, in getting at what you're talking about, I find that, and I've moved my studio, from my bedroom at my parents' house to my house to a place that I rented, and then now finally to this kind of permanent location we're at. But I find that I can work out of almost any space, but it takes me several weeks to acclimate.
Yeah, of course.
And so to the extent that, a young person who admires what you do is interested in kind of following a similar path, obviously the monitoring and the acoustics of the space is important, but like, if an acoustician came in here and said, you should do this, this, and this, but like you have calibrated to this
to this setup.
And so is I guess what I'm after is like, this stuff is important, but like, I think also so many times I might hear something like that as a younger person and think, okay, now I gotta have $5,000 or $6,000 for acoustic treatment. But and obviously there are things that you want to do, but just as far as like moving blankets and other things, there are other affordable solutions to these problems. But also, to the extent that you are working out of that room all the time, even if it's not the most ideal space, and you have records that you know and love, and you know what they should sound like, that you can get at this result even in not necessarily the most ideal acoustic environment.
Definitely. And it's just being aware of it. Like, it's just the priorities. Like, monitoring is a top priority versus, like, getting some, like, cool microphone or something.
Yes. That's really what you were after. Is like, dude, get your speakers and your monitoring situation at least further along before you start buying
other shit.
The sexy
the
purchases.
sexy shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, sick.
And then just be fun to be around, dude. You're with people grinding it out for like 12 hours. You know what I mean? You just gotta be fun. You gotta be fun and funny.
Yeah.
That's it. You gotta be fun to be around.
And that's all stuff that you observe from Dan in to some degree.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm almost there. So are there any recommendations or tools that you have for artists when they feel like stuck creatively or in your process together? Does that ever happen?
It does happen. Yeah. So, or do I have tools? That's
or like, do you have a way of shifting focus from the minutia of the problem to the bird's eye view of like, hey, this is like 10 seconds in this larger piece of music. We should we sweat.
Yeah, we don't need to. I mean, so a lot of times it's more about like reading the energy of any like given point in the process and stuff, and it's just like, let's come back to this.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And you are comfortable popping in and saying, maybe this is like diminishing returns. We've spent like 20 minutes working on the amp sound.
Yeah, it's not gonna. Yeah, it's not happening.
It's not gonna change with 20 more minutes. You might as well move on.
Might as well move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So it's just that, and that just comes with experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And your comfort level with those clients.
Comfort level with the clients and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it's like ultimately then like the vibe reset of then moving on to something else or some.
Is kind of like a palate cleanser.
It's like a palate cleanser.
And then you're kind of off that and you're on to the next thing.
You're on to the next thing. Yeah.
Okay, sick. So, and as a producer, and I know we talked about this earlier, and that your stance on this, but how much of your, like someone like Steve Albini would say, like, I'm not a producer, I'm an audio engineer, but his recordings definitely had a signature kind of sensibility and like attack and just kind of jumped out of the speakers in a very exciting way that I feel like is identifiable. But how much of your own sensibility informs the records that we know and love that you've worked on, or is your goal just to serve the artist and get at the tones that they're describing to you or the feeling that music gives you? Like, how much of your own sensibility is a part of what we hear versus how much are you kind of taking that Albini approach and just letting the band be the band and you just set the microphones in the best
My studio partner is way more Albini than
hands
me.
off in that way.
He's very hands off. He makes beautiful hands off recordings. I don't know how he does it. You know what I mean? I'm very heavy handed. Okay. And I'm just trying to get to the finish line. I'm just trying to make something that's inspiring for all of us to listen to. So it does end up being my aesthetic and influence.
Right.
And a lot of that it might be effects driven and stuff, where it's just like, I got to make this kind of like sound like a record. So I just start kind of getting my like sort of wetness, like, and I feel like a big part of my particular sound is like my wetness, how I hear the wetness on things. You know what I mean? And like that's how I start to get something to sound sort of semi-finished. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm in.
And that's a very like that's a very like that's a tone thing that you're imparting that is contributing to this feeling. That
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the tape echoes,
it's the tape
lexicon,
echoes, and it's how I achieve
the spring reverbs.
It's the spring reverbs. Those are my go-tos. I've dicked around with the plugins. I'll just be fucking with the plugin and stuff like that. Endlessly. And I just run it through the Echoplex. I pull up the Echoplex. I'm like, oh, there we go. It's like, oh, this is starting to sound cool. You know what I mean? And it's just me being in like sort of a low-level panic the entire session of just like trying to make sure we're getting done and that it's like sounding good, you know what I mean? So I'm just throwing darts at a dartboard, you know, and I'll end up with this like crazy like pile of effects and stuff that I kind of get balanced in a certain way.
But you find that in this increasingly digital world, in this world of like thousands of emulations, like, and then, Behringer making 1073s or whatever, you find that these pieces, that these analog components to your setup, you've used this term a few times, that it sounds like a record, and I know what you mean by that, but I think some younger people might not, but like, it's an immediate gratification thing, and that is part of the fun of like using this stuff, and it also just sounding more realized in terms of the tone that they're after.
It is, and it's one of those things where it's tough to describe. It's tough to put into words. It's a little intangible, you know.
But it sounds like a record means it feels a little bit more fully realized in terms of the tone and the sensibility of the recording.
And I've realized that some of that, like it sounds like a record, it's me being able to achieve balances that make the song sound like kind of refined and done, you know. And so it's like, it's just how I just can pop these certain tools on there, and it's the sound that just like works with how I balance and hear things.
And then just out of curiosity, so I know you talked about a couple of these. So you have the mono spring reverbs, you have your echoplexes and your tape echoes and stuff like that. What are some of those other pieces for you that seem to consistently deliver the goods in terms of just this setup?
This setup, the most important thing are the coil audio pre's. Ignore the fact that there's tinfoil all over them. It just has to do with...
Is this a Faraday cage happening? What is this?
Yes, it's a Faraday cage. That tube circuit with that particular tube picks up a lot of interference in this room.
And Houston is like, I mean, I've had issues like this almost every space that I've worked outside of those studio environments that are more traditional.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's par for the course.
Par for the course.
And you have done exactly what you said you do, and kind of figured out a way to get around that problem.
Yeah, and I just haven't gotten a chance to put it in my rack. And once it's in the rack, it'll be shielded way better and stuff. But until then, it's got tinfoil all over it and stuff. Those have been, without a doubt, the most amazing, like they are the best contribution to the sound that I was wanting to achieve.
And those are the coil audio...
Like mic pre's, the CA70s and the CA286s.
Do you have a couple of each of those over there, or are those all one?
Yeah, so the ones with the red, that's all the 286s. It's an EF86 tube. And then the ones with the gray faceplate up there, that's the CA70. And it's the, what's the black tube where you connect it on the top? I can't remember the name of the circuit. Anyway,
that's fine.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But okay,
are they dramatically different tones?
Dramatically different between the two.
And then go on.
Okay. The thing is, I use them to power microphones during recording sessions all day long. Great. Love it.
Yeah.
It's using them during mixing, especially on things I didn't record, okay? They're just like instant processors. They just get rid of all the edges. They just mid-forward, harmonically rich, take all that like ouchy everything about like digitally track stuff.
That's interesting.
I can be messing with harmonic plugins and tape emulations and compressors and stuff. I got 6-7 things on a fucking track. I get frustrated.
In place of?
I put a coil on. It's done. It's over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if you remember this, but I was working on a record with my wife's old band Rosette, and you let me borrow 2 of those.
I did.
And yeah, you did. And I had asked you about them, because I saw you had started maybe with a couple and then you kept adding, and I was like, man, you must really like these. Like, what's going on here? And I think I was talking about the time how I was using Decapitator a lot, and you were like, dude, you're like this, like, and there's a negative feedback on some of those, and yeah, I think part of that was one of my favorite records I ever worked on, was this record that you let me borrow them for, and I ran the whole mix in parallel.
Oh yeah.
Through and just cranked.
Yeah.
Like got all this saturation and just had a fader for like excitement. But yeah, it was. I know what you mean. It was very immediate, and that's the reason why, you know, I think sometimes clients will look around and they'll see all this stuff and they are attracted to it or whatever, but they're like, how the fuck, like, why would you ever spend
this much money,
this staggering amount of money to like get at these tools? But it not only is more inspiring, right, like you're saying, but it also is just faster.
Gets me to the finish line.
So much faster.
I'm just like grinding it out with the plugins. There's so many times, I do this once a year, where I'm just like, I never want to have to recall analog gear ever again.
Right.
I'm going to learn to mix in the box. Everyone else does it. I'm doing it. You know what I mean? And then I end up spending 4 days on one song.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm just fucking doing car test after car test, and it's miserable. And I'm just like, I start putting coils on stuff, and then I run stuff through my Manly compressor.
Yeah. And you're there.
Finish line.
Right.
Yeah.
So you keep coming back.
Keep coming back.
And you keep trying, but...
Keep trying.
And it's just not there.
Yeah, and it's so funny, all the judgy young kids on their message boards and stuff with their pride of not using any analog gear and stuff. It's like, fuck you guys.
Right. To me, that never made sense. I think that there are... I mean, obviously there are incredible things about just the flexibility of Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, being able to come back to something over and over again and change things. But I feel that that is also... this potential misstep, that the commitment to things is part of those records that so many, like, I've found that it's interesting to me that, you know, music is so cyclical, but for years it seemed like hip hop, R&B, pop was just dominating culture, and now guitar music is back, and it's all this stuff like Deftones is like super influential to all these young bands, and those sounds are just very easily, to me, more easily accessible using the hardware sometimes than the digital stuff. It's just interesting to me to hear that some of the young people are so off the analog thing.
Yeah,
I
no,
guess
it is.
Part of that is the recall.
It's the recall and the price. It's just,
the barrier to entry.
The barrier to entry is brutal and stuff. But like there were aspects of the analog stuff that has nothing to do with the sound of the analog stuff. It is like you're saying, it's the workflow.
That's what I was trying to say, right?
So it's like you can have 56 playlists of your guitar solo and stuff like that. But like in the tape days, it was like you did the solo, you listen back. Now, did you have the balls to record over that solo?
Right.
Exactly. Because it's like you have to commit and be like, this is the one, or I have a better one in me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just like some stakes there.
And then as someone who's been doing this for as long as you have, do you see that correlation? Like this limitless ability to come back to things and change things? Like I find that there's a certain threshold to me, when I can no longer tell if it's making the song better or worse, I know that I'm done. I don't know that I'm ever like 100%.
No, I just
pleased.
Yeah, everything's failure.
Exactly, right. There are a few things that I feel like I got at that idea, or I really feel like I got a hold of it. But that's happened for me few enough times that I could count them on both hands. You know, like where I really feel like, and that I really nailed it or whatever. But do you find that this limitless ability to come back to things, is not necessarily beneficial to the process?
And I do find that definitely 100%, and I'm definitively, and I'm way better at being able to manage that for clients, but I don't practice when I preach when I'm mixing by myself and stuff.
Fuck, dude,
you know,
that's so true.
Yeah, and I'll be fucking grinding like on a mix and stuff that's like I am just in the fucking weeds, and maybe it was like 2 days of dicking with some stupid reverb or something like that. I could have, you know, and I hit failure. I hit rock bottom. And I finally send it to them. They're like, I love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's so great.
yeah.
And I was like, I could have sent that like 3 days ago.
Right,
You know?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that there's this thing that happens when I am summing that because I know that this is it, I hear things differently.
Yeah.
Even though it's the exact same, and I start like being very hypercritical of like, is the snare 0.5 dB too
0.3?
loud
Yeah,
here? And it's like these inconsequential things that ultimately comes back to what you were saying earlier, that like with the right song, you can get away with anything.
Oh my God.
It does not matter if you were in, and in fact, it probably served that record with Steve Earle or all these other things that you've done out of these unconventional spaces. Like all the nuance and back and forth is really irrelevant. And it's like, can I listen to this while I'm making a cup of coffee in the morning and be stoked? Like for a listener, right? And
go back to like some of these your favorite records from this golden era,
right,
where it was hard to make records and expensive to make records. Okay,
yes.
Now take your favorite song, maybe one of the most classic, most amazing songs. Listen to it on a loop, like you were working on it in the studio.
Right.
Listen to it 10 times in a row. You will start to hear the craziest shit that you would have never had let go by. Mistakes. Right. You know what I mean? And then it's just like, well, that didn't fucking matter one bit.
At all.
It
didn't matter the 10th time either.
It didn't matter the 10th time either. And it's one of the, like, could be some of the biggest, most influential songs ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the
and as a listener, you're just fucking vibing to the song and the performance.
But as a performer, as an artist, or as a mixer, when it's your turn to be under that microscope, it's so easy to get lost in the sauce of like, I may played a bad note there, and it's like, yeah, man, but like when you take this off solo, you cannot hear that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? We don't need to go back. It's done, and like that really makes no difference to the feeling of, and that's what we're really after. Right?
Yeah, and that's how these like big time mixing engineers end up in their big time mixing engineer positions. Like they just completely trust their instincts. They have no self-doubt, and they're able to just make those decisions and say, this is awesome, and here we go, moving on.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, my last question. How do you maintain your curiosity for music? And I have always felt like your mixing is bold and adventurous. How do you maintain that curiosity after so much time doing this?
It's a tough one. This one actually is really, this is a hard one for me, dude, because I am struggling with my curiosity towards music.
Like presently?
Yeah, and I have for years and years. And it's interesting. What I have found is that I had a very strong, musical fandom opinion up until I became a facilitator. And then at a certain point, you realize all music is good. Every genre is good.
Right.
If it's the artist's intent, it's good.
Right.
There is no good music. There is no bad music.
Right.
It's all great. And whenever you're working on somebody's project, you have to hear their music through their ears.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to love their music. You have to love their influences, those kind of things. Well, my personal taste and preferences kind of get diluted over the years. So it's like if I'm it's really hard. And so if I'm by myself and I want to pop something on Spotify, I get indecision. I can't. It's just like I can't listen to music.
And it's endless.
It's endless.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just so like for me, what's very helpful is somebody else choosing music, and it's like whatever they choose, I put it on. It's like, oh, this song is a fucking banger, And it's like it's all I love. It's all so amazing and stuff. But I have had a problem just like with my. Like identifying what my personal relationship to music is anymore, because I'm just a facilitator for so long.
Right.
Okay.
So like do you listen to records in that way? Like, do you have like a hi-fi in here? Or
well, so that's really the only way that I've been able to just like listen to music.
Records.
Yeah, it's like putting on vinyl.
And it's the best, right?
And then you put it on, and you listen to the whole thing. It's not this playlist culture and stuff.
It's fixed. It is built around your taste. It's your stuff. And there's not like I do the same thing with Netflix where I'll end up on the screensaver because I've been scrolling for so long or just quit scrolling that I couldn't choose and it's been 30 minutes. And I'm finding, I'm 37 now, I've been doing this for my whole adult life, and I finding that I listen to more podcasts than anything.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
And completely not music related.
Oh, without a
and
doubt.
I didn't know how to articulate that feeling, but I feel like I'm in a similar position where I am mostly, my title recently played is all what the clients were telling me was like informing their sensibility recently.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, no, that's all I listen to is music that is influencing my clients and stuff. But I do.
But the curiosity comes from their excitement about those things.
About those things. And I am highly inspired about it. Man, it's like somebody will give me some young record,
right.
you know, and it's fucking, you know, blows my mind. And some of them, the production and stuff was just like, wow, that is fucking wild.
Right.
And that, you know,
and because it's so detached from maybe your own sensibility, that is the thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I am influenced by it. And then ultimately,
and then that gets delved into your aesthetic too.
Anything I'm working on it, I listen to references constantly. I'm constantly referencing.
Right.
Constantly.
Based on the client's
and it's just it's how I am. I lose perspective very quickly. Like my sense of balance and how it relates to the outside world goes away very very fast.
Yeah, I find the same thing.
Yeah, so I have to constantly have references to where I work for 25 minutes and I have to pop on references for a while and get it reset.
Right.
And so I am but a lot of times, like, I am influenced by this new music that I'm hearing. And ultimately I'm like, I want to make it sound like that. Well, I don't know how to make it sound like that. I don't have the tools or anything. But so it gets filtered through my weird workflow and my shit.
It's ultimately always going to be yours because you're the one who is facilitating it, and you have the tools that you have to do that, and you got as close as those tools or whatever would allow, and that's what it is.
Yeah, and then it's just like, wow, I ended up in some really weird place that wasn't my goal.
But it wouldn't have necessarily happened otherwise
if I hadn't still been influenced by some cool new shit.
Okay, cool, man.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, that was fun, dude. This was my first time to ever do an interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm so honored. Thank you so much for doing this, man. Seriously.
That was really fun, dude. Fun shooting the shit.
I know, man.
You're good at interviewing.
Oh, thank you, dude.
I won't